Hi friends, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Aylin, and today we are going to be talking about all the books that I've read from like the end of January to right now. It's currently June 27th. We have about 5 months, 6 months. Is it 5 or 6? February, March, April, May, June. 5. I've only read 26 books this year and 12 of them were in January, so this will just essentially be a normal size wrap up for me. So starting in February, the one and only book that I read was Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. I'm just going to use my phone and go through Goodreads to do this. I'll pop pictures up here. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. I did really like this one. This one is about Wallace, who is a lawyer, I believe, during his time on Earth, and one day from stress of his job and everything like that, he has a heart attack and passes away. But instead of that being where the story ends, that is just where the story begins, he ends up going to the underworld to a place called Charon's Crossing, wherein he meets Hugo, who is a reaper, I guess, and he helps bridge the gap from people who die to like moving on to death and whatever like afterlife suits them. Typically people that get to Charon's Crossing don't stay for very long, but Wallace stays for longer because he has a lot of life lessons to learn that he just didn't while he was alive. He wasn't a very good person. He was kind of like Ebenezer Scrooge in a way, in a lot of ways. While he is at Charon's Crossing, he learns about love and life and loss and the power of human connections while sorting through some of like his own previous traumas and stuff like that. I love TJ Klune's books. I didn't like this one as much as I like The House in the Cerulean Sea, but I still really did enjoy this one and I want to continue to read more from him in the future. Then moving on to March, the one and only book that I read in March was Her Volume 3 by Pierre Alexanti. I picked this one up because when I read Her Volumes 1 and 2 a really long time ago, I really liked them. They were some of my favorite poetry books I had read at the time. This one did not hold up. I gave it like a 3 out of 5. Actually, I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars immediately after reading it, but then I dropped my rating down to a 2. It wasn't bad. It just felt like someone was trying to be introspective of something that they had no idea about. I don't know. It didn't read right to me in a way, I guess. There wasn't anything like inherently wrong with it. It just felt funny to me. Like someone was making a bunch of assumptions and trying, like I said, trying to be super introspective, and it kind of read cringe. Like it was kind of cringy. There were still poems that I liked in it. I just didn't really love the whole poetry collection, and I don't think I'll read anything else by him, unfortunately. Then the first book that I read in April was Finley Donovan Jumps the Gun. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed this series. It's a cozy mystery series about this woman who, in the first book, she's a romantic suspense author. She has a meeting with her literary agent in a Panera. Someone overhears them talking and thinks that she is a hitwoman for hire, and so she slips like a bunch of cash and then a name and like an address or something like that of someone that she wants unalived. And Finley, who is struggling for writing because she's run out of her first half of her advance and needs like her second half, but she needs to turn pages in and she's got writer's block, is like really tempted to do this, but she doesn't want to hurt anybody. She's a mom, like she can't go to jail, she can't go to prison, but she has bills to pay. So she uses this kind of as like a starting point for inspiration for her story and gets into a bunch of hijinks along the way. There's a super fun sidekick in here. It's very funny. It's all around great, and I really love this series, so I gave that one a 4 out of 5 stars. April was a solid reading month for me compared to everything else. I also read How Lucky by Will Leitch. This one is, I called it a contemporary thriller in a vlog that I did. A very slow moving story, but it's about a guy named Daniel who he has a medical condition. I believe I don't know what the word is that I use. It starts with a D, but basically his body gets worse over time, where things that he used to be able to do, but over time like his health just declines, unfortunately. So he uses a wheelchair. He has a nursemaid who comes. He can't really talk using his mouth and like all of those muscles. He has to communicate via like a computer, and it talks for him, so he types it out. Because of his illness, he has a very routine schedule and life. It's very regimented, and this girl like comes walking by. He sees her. They don't normally acknowledge each other, but they wave this day, and then she gets in a car, and a couple days later she pops up as a missing person. He was the last person to see her, and he's having a hard time communicating with everyone else that he's seen her and that he's actually really worried for her safety. I really liked this book. The ending was definitely more suspenseful and thrilling than the rest of the book, but I have a hard time calling it a thriller because, like I said, the rest of it felt pretty slow moving. I really liked all the commentary on things that able-bodied people take for granted. It definitely made me take a closer look at my life, the things that I take for granted. I really liked the conversation piece of it. The thriller part was okay, but it really didn't do much for me, so I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Then I read Swimming Lessons by Lily Reinhart. At the beginning of the year, I said that one of my goals was to read like a poetry book every single month, and I've been fairly successful with that so far this year. I think the only month that I missed was February, but I gave this one like a 3.75 out of 5 stars. There weren't necessarily like specific poems that I super loved in this one, but there were certain lines that really stuck out to me amidst the poems, and it's definitely something that I'm going to be revisiting and I'm really happy to have in my poetry collection. I would for sure purchase more of Lily Reinhart's poetry if she came out with another collection in the future, so that was another good one, and I'm happy that that was one that I read this year because, like I said at the beginning of the year, like poetry is something that I have been really getting into and it helps me a lot with my mental health and everything. Damn, I read a lot in April. April 9th, I read Birds of California by Katie Cotugno, which is a book that I've been wanting to read for such a long time. This is not necessarily a romance, but more along the lines of like a contemporary with a romantic subplot, but it's not super romantic in any way. This one was really sad. Definitely look up content warnings. It deals a lot with like the Me Too movement and child actors and the pressures that can kind of come with being a child actor and being put in really uncomfortable situations, particularly in that business, because like I said, it deals a lot with the Me Too movement. This girl stopped acting a really long time ago after something happened to her. You don't ever really find out explicitly what it was, but you know that it's not good. And this person comes back into her life because the show that they were on wants to do a reboot, but they won't do it without her. They don't think it will be as successful. She has decided that she's done with acting, and it's kind of just like her coming to terms with everything that happened because she never fully healed from the trauma because she had to keep quiet. So it was a really hard book to read at points. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. I would have more of an emotional side to it, but I also feel bad saying that because I know that this was really personal to the author, but the dedication was really impactful because it says, you know what, I wrote this one for me. So I have a feeling that this is a very personal story to the author, so I don't really want to critique it too much, and people write what they're comfortable with, so yeah. But for my personal enjoyment, I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. Wasn't bad, it just wasn't my favorite. Then my poetry book for April was Flowers on the Moon by Billy Chapata. I love Billy Chapata's writing style and his poetry. I read Velvet Dragonflies earlier this year, and it's my favorite book that I've read so far this year. It's my favorite poetry collection I've ever read, and Flowers on the Moon is my best friend's favorite poetry collection, so I knew I had to read it. I give this one a 4 out of 5 stars. It didn't hit as hard for me as the other one, but there were still so many poems in this one that I really loved, and I will 100% go back and reread it, or even just like those singular poems. I really loved this one, and Billy Chapata is an auto-buy author for me now. He just has an incredible way with words. Damn, I read so much April 9th and April 10th. I think I was trying to film a 24-hour reading vlog and then it didn't happen. Then after that, I read A Proposal They Can't Refuse by Natalie Kanya. This is the first book in the Vega family love stories. I loved this book. It's one of my favorite traditionally published romances that I've read in a really long time. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. This one is about Camila and Liam, who their families came from very different backgrounds. Liam's family is Irish and Camila's family is Puerto Rican, and they have 2 buildings right next to each other. Camila's family decides to, I believe, sell their restaurant, and Liam's family is doing the same. So they're selling these buildings that are right next to each other. They've grown up with each other and they decide to help each other in order to purchase these buildings. But the grandfathers strike a deal with them, and they say that if they get married to each other, they won't do it, or something like that. Or they'll convince the families not to do it. And so Liam and Camila make not only a fake dating arrangement, but a fake engagement with their families, and along the way explore the feelings that they actually have for each other. There's kind of like an enemies to lovers there, but also childhood friends to lovers. It's very sweet. I really, really liked this one, and I cannot wait to read the second one. Anyway, 4 out of 5 stars to that one. Tombs by Junji Ito. Read this one in April too. Damn, April was a good reading month. This one is another short story collection by Junji Ito. I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars. I didn't love all of the short stories in this one, but I tend to give his short story collections 3 out of 5 stars, so this is pretty standard for me. I don't really have anything of note to say about that one other than it was 3 out of 5 stars. The next one, however, I will go feral for, and that is Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. This is one of my favorite romances that I've read this year. Potentially my favorite. I have a hard time. It's either that or The Fine Print, but I love them both so freaking much. This one is super popular. If you don't know what it's about, it is chronicling a toxic relationship between BJ and Magnolia Parks. They dated a few years ago, and then something happened that caused them to split up, but they're still very much in each other's lives, entangled up in each other, and it's just the constant back and forth. A toxic relationship and the people that you love and how hard it is to let them go, even if that is what's best for you. I read this book at the perfect time. I still go back and constantly flip through quotes in this book literally all the time. I made a TikTok about my favorite quotes in this book, but I'll read a couple for you now because it's, like I said, one of my favorite things, and I would go feral for this book. But the truth is, when you love someone how we were in love, it didn't matter what he'd do to me. He could have hit me with a bus, kind of he did. I innately still would have done everything I could to make him not feel what he was feeling. Does it not just break your heart? Once upon a time, BJ Ballantyne was the love of my life. He isn't anymore. And right now, that's all you need to know. Down and out love her in all spectrums of light, even in the absence of it. How stunning is that line? That line lives on my head on a loop. An endless loop, rent-free. Could not be happier that it lives there either, honestly. I can't think of it, not now. My chest goes tight as my heart bucks at the feelings I'm feeling, but I can't feel in front of him because he can't know he still does this to me. So sad. Normal is relative, I know. Normal for two broken hearts who can't find their pieces with anyone but each other. This one literally lives in my head rent-free, and I might get a tattoo for it. Our eyes hold like our hands won't. I love you, he blinks. Prove it, I sigh. And then this quote about cheating: it happens because people are careless and callous and casual with hearts and emotions, and those people are dangerous to be involved with. And so even if you love them, you shouldn't love them because nothing is worth feeling how he made me feel, and there was no guaranteeing that what happened before wouldn't happen again because the word of a cheater, she said, is void. My heart's logic is as blurry as the lines we pretend we don't cross. But I think at one point I loved him more than he hurt me, and it sort of began to feel stupid to me to love someone how I loved him and throw it all away because he had sex with someone else one time. I will go feral for that book. I literally will. I don't care. It's one of my favorite books that I've ever read. So I read Magnolia Parks. I gave it a 4 stars, but it's a 5. I'm changing it right now. Then my poetry book for May was Love, Poems, Epigraphs, and Aphorisms by Atticus, but it's spelled L-V-O-E. This one I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it, but it wasn't my favorite that I've ever read. I also listened to an audiobook that was an Audible original on Audible, and that was Love at First Psych by Cara Barristone. This one is a novella. It's a full cast. It's so well done, and it's basically about these two kids who are in a master's psych class, I believe, and they're trying to determine whether or not love at first sight is like real. So they interview a bunch of couples to see like if there's anything there, and then they have to do a paper on it using like the psychology that they learned. And along the way they end up falling in love with each other. Just the way that it was done was so freaking cute. I gave it a 5 stars. It made me tear up. It's an excellent novella. It's so good. And then I wanted some more romance, and I wanted Kennedy Ryan, so I read Coming Home by Kennedy Ryan. Again, a really well done audiobook. This one I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. It wasn't my favorite that I've ever read, and I found it easy to like pull away, but I would definitely say it's one of Kennedy Ryan's lighter books that she's written, and it made me want to read more Kennedy Ryan. So it was like 2 hours or something like that, or maybe it was 4 hours. It was really well done. It's about these people who were friends in college, and then like the timing just never lined up, and so when like homecoming happens for this guy's daughter, he ends up going. He's a really famous writer and so is she, and so they want to do an interview for homecoming, and these two people find their way back to each other, and it's really sweet. And then a book that I read previously this weekend was Dewdrop by Kay O'Neill. This one I gave like a 4 out of 5 stars. It was cute. My camera stopped recording because I was talking too long, but I honestly picked it up to help encourage my stepsisters to read because they are younger, so I thought that if I was reading something that like they thought that they could also read, they might sit down with me. It didn't work, but this was still cute. It's like a 3 out of 5 stars. It was sweet, but it was not anything crazy. I prefer the Tea Dragon Society series by Kay O'Neill. Those are the 14 books, I believe, that I have read from February to now. Hopefully July will be a better reading month for me. If I read anything like super substantial over the next 3 days, then I will just include that in my July wrap up. But that is everything that I've read for the past 5 months. I wanted to have it somewhere just like cohesive so that I could look back on this. Not my best reading year, but if I really want to, I know I can make up for it. If not, that's just what the first half of this year was for me. I can only hope to do better for the second half. For myself, the only reason that I set that expectation is because I know I'm capable of more and I just actively haven't been doing it. However much you read is completely valid and you are a reader, whatever that number is for you. Anyway, that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Let me know if you've read any of those books or what your favorite book that you've read so far this year was. I would love to know and chat with you guys in the comments. I hope you're doing well reading mentally and otherwise. I hope that you guys enjoy this video and I really hope to see you all in my next one. Bye guys.